Another powerful moment came when the president was asked whether Iran might be trying to string him along. That question hit directly at the heart of the negotiations. His response was blunt. He said the United States is not happy and that Iran would be smart to make a deal. The phrase, "They're not saying those golden words," stood out, clearly referring to Iran refusing to fully abandon nuclear ambitions. That wording suggests frustration behind closed doors may be even stronger than what's being shown publicly. Negotiations appear to be alive, but fragile. And when talks are fragile in the Middle East, history shows things can shift quickly. Then the discussion moved toward military strategy. When asked whether using force could trigger regime change in Iran, he responded carefully, saying nobody truly knows what would happen. That uncertainty is important. It signals that while military strength is emphasized, there is no guarantee of predictable outcomes. It also shows the administration is aware of the regional domino effect such action could cause, from Iraq to Syria to global oil markets. The world is watching every word because energy prices, alliances, and global security are all tied to that decision. On Cuba, the rhetoric was unusually direct, calling it a failing nation and openly discussing the possibility of major political change sends a strong diplomatic message. For decades, U.S.-Cuba policy has been defined by slow shifts and cautious language. This was not cautious. The idea of a friendly takeover suggests pressure combined with opportunity, implying that economic collapse could open the door to political transformation. If such discussions are truly happening at high levels, it would represent one of the biggest Western Hemisphere developments in years. The president also leaned heavily into strength messaging. He repeatedly emphasized that the United States has the greatest military in the world, and that he would prefer not to use it, but would if necessary. This framing positions him as restrained but ready. It's a classic leverage tactic in negotiations, project dominance while signaling willingness to compromise. Whether that strategy moves Iran closer to a deal remains uncertain. When asked about election-related accusations, the tone shifted to domestic politics. Instead of engaging with claims of potential emergency powers, he pivoted toward criticizing crime rates in opposition-led states. That pivot serves two purposes. It avoids validating the accusation while reframing the debate around law and order. As midterms approach, crime and economic messaging appear to be central themes. Economic optimism was another key thread. Mortgage rates dropping below 6%, falling energy prices, and expanding oil production were presented as evidence of success. By highlighting Texas and energy production, he connected foreign policy stability with domestic economic relief. The underlying message: strong global positioning leads to lower costs at home. There was also subtle positioning on Latin America. When asked about Venezuela and Brazil, he expressed openness to dialogue and deals. On Pakistan, he offered praise for leadership. These statements reinforce a broader diplomatic strategy, maintaining relationships across multiple regions simultaneously, while keeping negotiation channels open. Perhaps the most consistent theme throughout the entire exchange was uncertainty. No final decision on Iran, possible deal with Russia and Ukraine, potential change in Cuba, maybe military action, maybe not. That ambiguity keeps leverage alive, but also keeps global markets and allies guessing. The press conference felt less like routine questioning and more like a preview of possible geopolitical shifts. Iran remains the most immediate pressure point. Russia-Ukraine remains the most visible conflict. Cuba represents a potential surprise development, and domestic politics are heating up ahead of the 2026 cycle. The administration appears to be signaling strength, flexibility, and readiness, but the clock may be ticking on diplomacy in multiple regions at once. And if negotiations fail, the consequences won't just affect Washington, they will ripple across the world. What we witnessed in this press exchange was not routine politics. It was a window into rising global pressure points that could reshape American foreign policy in real time. When asked about negotiations with Iran, the president made his frustration unmistakably clear. He said he is not happy with the way talks are going and emphasized that Iran is still not willing to give the United States what it has to have. And what is that non-negotiable demand? No nuclear weapons. He repeated that phrase more than once, signaling that this is the red line. While he did not announce a final decision, he also did not rule out military action. When pressed about the risk of a long conflict in the Middle East, he acknowledged that war always carries risk, both good and bad, but reminded reporters that previous military operations under his leadership had succeeded. The message was calculated. Diplomacy is preferred, but force remains on the table. That alone puts the world on notice. The conversation then widened to Russia and Ukraine, where the president claimed that discussions are progressing and that he has personally spoken with Vladimir Putin. He described the war as tragic and unnecessary, referencing massive casualties and calling it a shame that the conflict continues. He stated that the United States wants a deal with both Russia and Ukraine, and even suggested that an agreement could be close. However, he stopped short of providing details, leaving observers wondering whether optimism is grounded in real diplomatic progress or strategic positioning. Either way, the tone suggested urgency and a desire to frame himself as the deal-maker capable of ending one of the most destructive conflicts in Europe in decades. Then came one of the most striking moments of the exchange: Cuba. The president described Cuba as a failing nation facing economic collapse, lacking money, oil, and resources. He claimed talks are happening at high levels, and even floated the possibility of what he called a friendly takeover. That phrase alone carries enormous geopolitical weight. While he did not outline what such a development would look like, he implied that Cuba's leadership is in serious trouble and may be seeking American assistance. For decades, U.S.-Cuba relations have been defined by tension, sanctions, and distrust. Suggesting the possibility of major political transformation signals a potential shift that could redefine hemispheric politics. Domestically, when confronted with accusations from political opponents that he is planning to manipulate future midterm elections, the president rejected the narrative and pivoted to criticizing crime rates in states led by his critics. He dismissed reports of a proposed national emergency related to elections, saying he had never heard of such plans. Rather than engaging directly with the allegation, he reframed the discussion around public safety and governance performance. This strategic deflection highlights the increasingly polarized political climate heading into the 2026 cycle, where election integrity will once again dominate headlines. Questions also touched on investigations and high-profile figures. Regarding subpoenas for business leaders, he expressed confidence that they would cooperate and described them as innocent individuals doing their jobs. When asked about Epstein-related files involving prominent political families, he said he knew nothing about the files and reminded reporters of his own exoneration. These brief but pointed answers suggest an effort to shut down speculation while avoiding deeper entanglement in politically explosive subjects. In the Middle East beyond Iran, the president spoke positively about Iraq's leadership and said he maintains strong relationships in the region. He also praised Pakistan's leadership, describing both civilian and military figures there as people he respects. These comments reflect an attempt to reinforce diplomatic ties in strategically critical regions at a time when global alignments are shifting rapidly. On Belarus, he noted respect for its leader and indicated that relations are stable, again, signaling openness to engagement even with controversial governments. Economic messaging was woven throughout the exchange. The president highlighted falling mortgage rates, dropping energy prices, and expanding